Hello and welcome to the 21st video in the Cosmic Wisdom series. This is the Level 6 event in the Knowledge pillar of the Cosmic Wisdom course. In this video, I examine some of the realities and moralities of some of the foods that human beings eat. Some of the food that people eat on this planet is good for our bodies, good for our spirits, good for other people, good for the animals on this planet, good for the environment, good for the climate, and good for our relationships with aliens. I call that kind of food good food. But some of the food that people eat on this planet is bad for our bodies, bad for our spirits, bad for other people, bad for the animals on this planet, bad for the environment and the climate, and bad for our relationships with aliens. I call that kind of food bad food. In this video, I'm going to examine which foods are good for us all and which foods are bad for us all. I'm going to start off by examining which foods are good and which foods are bad for the climate. Then I'm going to move on to which foods are good and which foods are bad for our own personal health. And then finally, I'm going to talk about which foods are good and which foods are bad for the animals on this planet. The two main causes of global warming and climate change are the fossil fuel industry and the meat and dairy industry, otherwise called animal agriculture. In video 17 of the Cosmic Wisdom course, I explained how the burning of fossil fuels is releasing huge amounts of the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. In this video, I'm going to explain how huge amounts of another greenhouse gas, methane, is being released by both the fossil fuel industry and the meat and dairy industry. This pie chart shows the different greenhouse gas emissions in the United States in 2022. Only 11% of the greenhouse gas emissions were methane, whereas 80% were carbon dioxide. However, methane is about 84 times stronger at warming the atmosphere than carbon dioxide is. Therefore, the component of our day-to-day greenhouse gas emissions in the US that's causing the greatest immediate increase in global warming is methane. This is a graph of the atmospheric methane concentration over the last 10,000 years. As you can see, the amount of methane in the atmosphere has gone up dramatically in just the last 100 years. This increase is due to two things: a huge increase in the burning of fossil fuels and a huge increase in the number of animals being raised by humans for food. This graph shows that in the US in 2022, the extraction and burning of fossil fuels was responsible for 28% of the methane emissions in the form of natural gas and petroleum systems, and 6% in the form of coal mining. It also shows that animal agriculture was responsible for 25% of the methane emissions in the form of enteric fermentation and 9% in the form of manure management. Enteric fermentation refers to the normal digestive processes within domestic livestock, such as cows, pigs, sheep, and goats. These processes release large amounts of methane into the atmosphere. Methane is also released from the manure that the animals produce. When the numbers in this chart are added up, the burning of fossil fuels is responsible for 34% of the methane emissions in the US, and the consumption of meat and dairy foods is also responsible for 34%. So if we, as individuals, would like to personally cause less climate change, then not only would we need to stop supporting and contributing to the burning of fossil fuels, we'd need to stop supporting and contributing to the raising and killing of animals. Food is one of the few things in our lives that can reliably make us feel happy. And that makes it very hard for a lot of people to reevaluate their food choices. However, animal agriculture is devastating our planet in several different ways. Meals that contain meat or dairy produce up to 60 times more greenhouse gases than plant-based meals of equivalent nutritional value. Which means that by going vegan, a person can slash their personal contributions to climate change down to about 1/60th of what it was before. The meat and dairy industry is the leading driver of deforestation and loss of biodiversity, because the animals that we eat require huge amounts of plants to eat, and those plants require vast areas of land to grow. About half of all of the fertile land on this planet is now farmland. 70% of the mass of birds on this planet are the birds that we eat, mostly chickens. Humans account for over 1/3 of the mass of mammals on the earth. About 60% are the mammals that are raised for us to eat. And the rest of this planet's mammals, from mice to whales, now only makes up about 4%. The meat and dairy industry, and those people who pay for its products, are destroying nature. I grew up consuming large quantities of meat and dairy every day. It was a big part of who I was. So when I eventually decided that I needed to go vegan for moral reasons, it was a very hard thing to do. One of the things that made that transition hard for me was that I had been taught that we all need to eat meat and dairy to maintain healthy bodies. However, it turns out that what I had been taught about food was not true. Out of the top 10 leading causes of death in the US, 5 of them are either completely or primarily caused by the food and drink that we consume. And 4 of the other 5 are supported by unhealthy eating habits. So clearly, the food that we choose to eat really matters to our health. The number 1 leading cause of death in developed countries is heart disease or cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is caused by too much cholesterol in the blood. Cholesterol is a waxy, fat-like substance that can build up on the inside walls of our blood vessels, along with fat, calcium, and other substances found in the blood, restricting the flow of blood. These sticky buildups are called plaque. When plaque builds up in your blood vessels, it's called atherosclerosis. And when atherosclerosis happens in your heart, it's called coronary heart disease. So, where does the cholesterol in our blood come from? Some of it is produced by our livers. Our bodies need cholesterol as a structural component of our cell membranes. This is true for humans, and it's true for animals. The liver makes all of the cholesterol that we need out of the saturated fat and trans fat that we eat. So, if we eat too much saturated fat or trans fat, our livers will make too much cholesterol and put it into our blood. Cholesterol can also be taken into our bodies by eating it. This type of cholesterol is called dietary cholesterol. We don't need any dietary cholesterol. Our livers make all of the cholesterol that we need. So all of the cholesterol that we eat is extra. Dietary cholesterol only comes from meat and dairy. It's in the cell membranes of all animal cells. There isn't any cholesterol in plants or plant-based foods. So, how can we reduce our chances of getting cardiovascular disease? Well, we can eat less cholesterol, we can eat less saturated fat, and we can eat less trans fat. And this can be achieved by eating less meat and dairy. I'm going to jump now to the fifth leading cause of death, which is strokes. Because strokes are often caused by exactly the same thing that causes cardiovascular disease: having too much cholesterol, fat, or plaque in our blood vessels. If the blood vessels in your heart become too clogged up, you get a heart attack. If the blood vessels in your brain become too clogged up, then you get a stroke. So, if anyone would like to reduce their risk of having a stroke, they could eat less cholesterol, eat less saturated fat, and eat less trans fat. And all of those things can be achieved by eating less meat or dairy. The second most common cause of death is cancer. A number of different factors around us can cause cancer, from ultraviolet light to smoking. However, this video is about food, so let's take a look at some of the most carcinogenic foods that people eat. The World Health Organization has classified red meat and processed meats as carcinogens. Red meat and processed meats cause cancer. Casein, which is the main protein in milk, has also been found in many scientific studies to promote the growth of cancer cells. Strong correlations exist between the consumption of meat and dairy and the risk of getting cancer. And so, if anyone would like to reduce their risk of getting cancer, they could eat less meat or dairy. But don't we need to eat meat for the protein? No. In spite of most of us being taught in school that we do, that's actually not true. Plants also contain protein, and unless a person eats a very odd diet of just sugar, almost any plant-based diet is going to contain all of the protein that anyone needs. An increasing number of very strong and healthy athletes are actually going vegan because of all of the associated health and performance benefits. And they certainly don't suffer from any protein deficiencies. But don't we need to drink cow's milk for the calcium? No. Human beings didn't evolve needing to drink the milk of another species. In fact, it was only about 2,000 years ago that the ability to digest milk became common in Europe. And in today's world, about 65% of humans are still lactose intolerant. All of the calcium that anyone needs can be found in a balanced, plant-based diet. I could continue down the list of leading causes of death and explain how some of the other ones are also caused or supported by the consumption of meat and dairy products. However, I'd like to move on now to consider a different aspect of this subject. I've talked about how meat and dairy foods are bad for the climate, the environment, and our own health. Now, I'd like to talk about something that should be obvious to all of us, but sadly isn't. Killing animals is bad for the animals. Being a good person involves not harming others. But killing animals, or paying for them to be killed so that you can eat them, is harming them. Yesterday, I saw an advert on Disney Plus for a restaurant chain that has responsibly raised beef on its menu. If you were to responsibly raise a human child and then kill them for any reason, then the killing of that child would still be morally unacceptable to most people. How is it that it's wrong to kill humans, but it's okay to kill other conscious life forms? No matter how people justify the unnecessary killing of animals, it is still negative discrimination. It is speciesism. It's inconsiderate, selfish, and unkind. It's certainly not consistent with universal peace, or universal love, or universal well-being. In addition to killing the animals, in the meat and dairy industry, most of the animals are not treated at all well when they're alive. I'm not going to show you any images or videos of just how badly animals are treated in the meat and dairy industry because I don't want to traumatize you. But if you're a meat eater, I will just verbally point out to you that you're paying for horrific levels of cruelty to the animals that you eat. I know because I used to go to farms and slaughterhouses to comfort the animals before they were slaughtered. And I used to see the animals experience levels of suffering that had them crying and screaming. When I first became a vegetarian, I continued to eat dairy products because I assumed, incorrectly, that dairy animals weren't harmed as much as meat animals. But I was wrong. In the production of eggs, billions of female chickens are needed every year to lay the eggs, but only a very small number of male chickens are needed. Therefore, every year, when they're just a few days old, about 7 billion male chicks are culled, usually by dropping them from conveyor belts while alive into a grinder or macerator. So, anyone who buys eggs that are produced by the industrialized egg industry is paying for this to happen, even if the eggs are labeled as organic or range-free. In the production of milk, 1-year-old female cows are put into restraining equipment called rape racks. There, they are forcibly, artificially inseminated. After a gestation period of about 9 months, the mothers give birth and start producing milk. Within 24 hours of birth, the babies are taken away from their mothers. And if you've ever seen any of those videos of the desperate mothers chasing after the vehicles that just stole their babies, you'll probably have at least some inkling of just how upsetting that is for them. After the cow's baby has been taken from her, machines pump milk out of her 2 or 3 times a day for the rest of her life. Within 3 months of giving birth, she's artificially inseminated again, so that she'll have another baby before she stops producing milk. This cycle continues for 3 or 4 years, after which she's killed and her meat is sold as beef. After female calves are taken away from their mothers, they're raised to be dairy cows. Most of the male cows are shot soon after birth. Some of the male cows are raised for about 8 months and then killed for veal. Some of them are castrated, raised until they're 1 or 2, and then killed for beef. So anyone who thinks that buying milk, cheese, yogurt, or any other dairy products isn't causing any harm to any animals is mistaken. Our alien friends are telepathic and empathic. When they open up their consciousnesses to this planet, they feel the terror, pain, and suffering of billions of animals. innocent animals that our species has enslaved. Intelligent, gentle animals that our species abuse and kill in holocaustic numbers and ways every single day. And so, when human beings reach out to aliens for any reason, it's no wonder that the aliens are cautious and reserved in their response. Whenever a person reaches out spiritually or telepathically to aliens, the aliens can look into the heart and mind of that person and see and know exactly who they are. They can see if that person has sufficient empathy, kindness, and wisdom to live in harmony with animals and nature, or not. If you would like to one day be friends with non-human intelligences from other planets, then you really should consider first becoming friends with the non-human intelligences on this planet. The good news is that the range, quality, and taste of vegan foods that are available to all of us has never been better. So, if anyone watching this video likes the idea of experimenting with veganism, but maybe they don't want to give up the taste of meat and dairy, then they really have nothing at all to worry about. If you like the idea of finding out about some of my favorite vegan recipes, then have a look at the good food or spiritual food videos in the collections section of my Patreon group. In summary, good food is food that is good for our bodies, good for our spirits, good for other people, good for the animals on this planet, good for the environment, good for the climate, and good for our relationships with aliens. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you've watched it all of the way through, then you've now completed level 6 in the knowledge pillar of the Cosmic Wisdom course. If you like, you can download the Cosmic Wisdom chart, print it out, and put a tick or a check mark in the checkbox for this video. If you've also watched the first 20 videos in this series, then you now have a Cosmic Wisdom of 6555. If you've enjoyed watching this video, then please like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye for now.